Hello, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. It is my great pleasure to introduce Thomas Bell, who's going to talk about a beautiful Tangled Mess, the trials and tribulations of growing a Moodle-based learning platform. On behalf of the iMoot team, thank you for taking time to present at iMoot, Thomas. Over to you.
Thanks very much. The title is a bit of a provocative one, so hopefully that's brought you guys in. Let's just get started straight away. Well, thanks for inviting me, first of all, to the iMoot team. I kind of like talking about what we've done with Moodle, so I'm gonna give a bit of a preface to my talk first. So I'm going to talk about the evolution of the learning platforms of the company I currently work for. They are called Avado. They used to be called Florian. You may have heard of that name more. But I'm going to brush over topics really quickly. My aim is to give you like a glimpse at some of the approaches, the successes, some of the challenges, maybe the choices that we've made over the past 3 years. And hopefully you'll have some bits and bobs to take away. So let's just dig into it. Hey, this is me. So my name's Thomas Bell. I've been working with learning technology for about 6 years. It's a short career, I guess, but it's predominantly Moodle, Totara LMS right at the beginning when it first came out, and Mahara. I co-authored the beginner's guide on Mahara. Oh God, how many years ago now? 4 years ago now. And yeah, big advocate. So at my current company, I've led some pretty radical transformations of the Moodle learning platforms. They started out as fairly vanilla Moodle instances, and there's some pretty gorgeous looking learning platforms out there now, which I'll show you. Let's go and have a look. So I have to give a brief overview right now of what the company is. So just to briefly explain, Avado sets partnerships up with organizations, also creates startups, incubates them, grows them. We design learning products in loads of different industries. We then market them and sell them in-house to businesses, corporates, individuals, design and build the product and the content in-house as well. We host the stack, and we also we've got people in-house to support the learning experience really closely. And these are the 4 things that really bring the entire product to life. And I'm just going to dig into one of them. So I'm just going to dig into number 1 there, learning platform. And I'd love to talk about sort of number 4 there, but it'll have to wait for another day. So yeah, this is pretty much the learning platform state of play. We've got a suite of extra functionality on top of Moodle. It's sitting on some infrastructure, which I'm not going to go into today, really. But we've got this extra suite of functionality sits on top of Moodle, which is used across 14 different learning platforms. Underneath that, there's a variety of different businesses, different products. I was gonna say they're on the latest version of Moodle, but I think 3.2 is out now or coming out soon. But they're all on the latest version, and we've got a lot of plugins, custom plugins that we use. We've made to achieve our learning experiences. I think I can't remember the exact figures, but I think to put 150 into perspective, like Moodle itself is something like 150 or 200. Don't quote me on that. We don't do core hacks to the code base. We put a few pull requests in to sort of improve the Moodle framework, but we have a policy of not hacking core. So this is how I describe the learning platform stack. I don't know if this is of interest to most of you, but this is how it's this is a nice visual description that I take with me when I'm sort of explaining Moodle, the infrastructure, the bits that we add on top. So this is the sort of thing I take. We use, just like a lot of you, use themes to differentiate the different products. And we've got product teams designing different learning products by using all the tools that we give them. So that's the sort of how I explain that. But when I joined the company, it wasn't really like that. So when I joined the company, it was more like this. And I couldn't really find any more smart art to represent this, so you have to bear with me here. A lot of disjointed, the tangled mess. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's a lot of disjointed layers, lots of going off in different directions for the different products. And it's safe to say, and this is pretty normal, I think, that once the sort of design guys and the business leaders know that you can manipulate the UI and you can grow the feature set because it's a modular system. We had a period where we expanded rapidly. We went from, I don't know, something like 15 plugins to 100 within a year. And that was great. That was an age of experimentation, but also there were some challenges associated with that. Couple of things. Now this might not be rocket science. It's not a hugely over technical thing, but when I arrived at the company, I'd seen quite a lot of bulk user uploads for various universities and companies I work with. It was such a relief when we had monthly rolling cohorts that were managed by a CRM. It wasn't perfect, but like I didn't have to do bulk user uploads. Quickly moving on. There was a lot of self-paced courses that the company was doing. It's a fully online company, so all of the courses that Vardo runs are fully online. But there was a lot of self-paced courses, and they'd recently moved to a cohort model for the majority of them. And they had this personable tutoring and mentoring and marking, community management, and it was just impressive to see. Just one of the things that I wanted to highlight. And there was this emerging successful product with something called Squared Online, which is a partnership that we run with Google. And this has monthly cohorts, but the user feedback that we receive for that, every couple of cohorts is iterating the course design. And that was just really, to me, 3 years ago, that was impressive. So it's something I wanted to just mention there. And another thing was that early in 2014, the company took the learning technology team took a no scorn policy. And this was sort of based on a collective experience in the team. No real need to use it for effective learning delivery. And it allowed us to make sure that every element of our learning experience was mobile responsive. And that was a key thing. We did the rapid authoring in HTML, and the team had those skills. And we used native Moodle tools, like a lot of lessons, which I hadn't seen used in practice quite a lot before that. Page, forum, quiz, feedback, all that. And they were joined up quite well with your regular weekly live classes using Adobe Connect. It went down really well, and we really did produce some fantastic learning journeys. The learning platforms on the side, like supporting that, were fairly basic. They were pretty standard vanilla Moodle. So I think this is an example of the platform right at the beginning. I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty clean, but it's not like pushing the boundaries of in terms of design. It looks Moodle-y. I've done some talks in the past, the Moot last year, about how can you make a site look less Moodle-y? But right at the beginning, it was all right. It was pretty standard. Like I said, the important thing was very much the learning design and the personable tutor support and facilitation. Shortly after, and one of the first projects that I was to lead was this thing called the IOC Athlete MOOC. It's now being renamed to the Athlete Learning Gateway. And it was the first sort of, for the company, it was the first sort of jump into splitting up learning into like bite-sized chunks. They got these cohort model 6-month programs. This was about bite-sized learning. The project, we really had the opportunity to have a go at customizing the UI of Moodle, and I sort of led that charge. It was a MOOC, so we had to also take into consideration some of the visual elements, changing the course formats to suit the content. And yeah, it was the first foray of that. Got some key takeaways coming up from this. But first of all, I wonder if we could have a look at this, and maybe anyone in the chat just tell me what they think that is. I don't know if that's going to work. I'll give it a few seconds, but then SQL query. Okay, let's keep going, see what happens. No idea. Right, so this was basically to try and make our IOC Athlete Learning Gateway a multilingual site. So what you're seeing there is it's just a spreadsheet function, which is taking content that we put into an asset board, called it, and it's our way of making sure that the HTML was making sure that it was accurate, perfectly formed HTML, and that's super important for this multi-lang filter in Moodle. We had a go at it. We fully translated the IOC Athlete MOOC into languages, English and French, and this was quite a phenomenal thing. We had courses that were built in a little bit of time, so it took a couple of days to make, but you could flip languages, videos would flip. It was fairly effective, but painstaking. And if something went wrong with that thing there, yeah, I don't want to think about it really. So the main point here is, like, we didn't have a massive generated by hand, so the content would be generated by hand. You'd have a row with a column generated by hand or pasted in from somewhere, but then this would automatically make some HTML from all of that content that just would work with the multi-lang filter. It had to be in a certain format. Okay, I'm trying to read it now, but yeah, it had to be in a certain format. And this particular one is 2 videos flipping, an English video and a French video. I mean, a year later, we moved away from it. There was a limitation in using the multi-lang filter in headings. The headings have a character limit of 255 characters. So actually, we had to move away because we could only put 2 languages in there. It was also really expensive as you could imagine, to translate all of the content and all of the UI into various different languages. And now the Athlete Learning Gateway are using they're using subtitles and translated transcripts and things like that to really achieve many more languages. But we had this sort of I don't know if you could call that a question, but we had this sort of thing put on our desk in the early days. So a challenge that we faced was that we'd have someone's vision. They'd come along, put this thing on the table. Here are the designs. Go. Now, it was a real struggle to sort of let people know about the limits that we had at the time with Moodle, with the data that was being thrown out by Moodle. And so we often had a few misalignments between what was possible with the resources in the team, the skills in the team, the framework at the time. And I would say that we learned a load of really important lessons about designing for and with Moodle. So, but the one key thing, and I had a lot of painful meetings, and I had a lot of painful conversations around this. But the key thing for me was that it is actually really good to have people think outside the box in terms of design with Moodle. So really, I really do believe this now, that we really should have people that don't know Moodle designing for it. If they don't know it very well, this is, I think, good. If they don't know it at all, that's even better. But get them involved. Let them know, like, just be fair to them. Let them know that you are going to iterate their first design, and it's not going to be the thing. It's not going to probably be the thing that comes out. And have I don't know what the sort of job role is here, but some expert Moodle guru person that knows functionality, knows what's available, knows what's possible. Power user, theme developer, some other developer. Have one of those people steering and iterating the designs. I think that's really important, and it's one of the things that allowed us to really think outside the box and do some cool stuff. Yes, Andy. Yes, we did. Yeah. Got a few slides on that, and I've also got a presentation that I can share that I did a year or so ago. It's probably important to point out that I lead the teams that do this. Best looking Moodle site ever. We've achieved good. It's also just been upgraded to Moodle 3.1.2 last night, so that's kind of cool too. Let's move on. So next one. We did a lot of this in the sort of early days. So minimalizing the features. We had a key project which was really focused on minimalizing the things that are put in front of the learner. It was, to be honest, the effort was led by at the time one of our resident minimalism experts. You probably all know him. He's called Leonard Hoax. And he's talked about this sort of stuff publicly for a while, but he made huge strides on our learning platforms at the time. Not the particular one that's on the screen here. This is my example of, actually, if we just take away a lot of the blocks, we go for a sort of a blockless design, which I know HQ are looking at, or have already done. You sort of get the option to steer the learner much more directly. And it worked out really well, I think. So I guess also I'm not sure I'd recommend this one, but a lot of the sort of language strings that you get in the platform for our corporate, like individual or corporate learners, didn't make sense. Some of them just don't make sense. So Leonard went through a lot of these and did a sort of a pass of them. Not all that useful. So yeah, without a big developer resource, we sort of took some pretty funky approaches to honing the UI. And this is one of them. I'm not sure I'd recommend doing it, but work with what you got sort of mentality. Yeah. Yeah, that should help, I think. So I've turned my webcam off now. So yeah, the next thing on minimalizing that we did, and this again, I wouldn't recommend this, but we did have to do it. It's not great. It definitely creates maintenance issues down the line. And I wouldn't recommend doing it, but we have made strides recently with modifying renderers to do this sort of thing. I'd recommend you do that. But we definitely still find ourselves doing this. It's not designing out features, but it's hiding things that maybe confuse our learners or aren't that useful. So yeah, that's just a summary, right? 2014, a couple of years ago. The summary is we had massive expansion. We did some big implementations. The IOC platform was one of those. We radically changed. We made a grid layout for the IOC MOOC, and you can go and see that. It's a free site. You can sign up. Squared Online did a huge sort of refocus of the redesign, which was around minimalism, as I said. And we used Moodle tools to sort of create this mobile responsive learning content. Right. Okay. So we got into this habit of yeah, exactly. Getting into the habit of making a plugin for everything. I do think there's some benefits to this. We're not hacking core, so every time we're throwing up a learning platform, we're definitely not forking away and doing our own different thing. We make a plugin for it, and the idea is to share that across the businesses, and hopefully in the future share that with the community. But we go into the habit of producing custom plugin for tiny things. And it's definitely, yeah, it was a huge growing list. That this is one of the challenges that we had, and there are definitely some things that we're doing now to try and combat that. I'll come on to that in a bit. It's mostly around standardizing functionality, making sure that you really think carefully about the features that all of your different stakeholders want. But I'll come on to that in a minute. Yeah, so Andy, yeah, we did. So this was the early 2015 was our partnership with the United for Wildlife project. It was extremely low budget. I know that sounds kind of crazy, given that it's done quite well. But we didn't have long to do this. So the idea was, we don't have long. Let's limit the amount of functionality that we use, or that we allow the learning designers to use. In fact, I worked very, very closely with a learning designer called Will Proctor. I worked really closely with Will to say, well, actually, we only use this. We're only going to use this tool, all Moodle tools, and we're going to try and focus the user experience on those things. We did some theme design, quite nice theme design, and we use quite a lot of prototypes to test whether it was kind of a bed to test things on. So I'll show you what I mean by that now. So this is one example. We got rid of like I said earlier, we got rid of the navigation bar on the site. It was a bit complicated, and it didn't really focus on what the learner actually needed to do. So we created these in the in-course layout, where the activity is, a forum or whatever it is. We handcrafted this list of activities, and we styled it appropriately. We got a front-end resource to sort of style that like this on the right-hand side. It's an idea of rapid prototyping. We were able to put this up, test it on this platform, and really see, get some feedback about whether it worked. And eventually, and that's what you see on the right, develop a plugin that is dynamic. It's just based on the activities in the section, and it's got the activity completion. And so eventually, admittedly, it took a while after that to invest in this, but eventually we got a plugin that could do this for us. We wouldn't have to painstakingly put this together. It's kind of like that multi-lang usage that I mentioned earlier, where we're able to do this quite funky spreadsheet. Didn't require developer resource. It looks sort of like a Mechanical Turk type thing, and prove that it works without spending the developer resource, and then put some time and effort into it later on when we know we're going to scale it. And that's the sort of outcome that we got. We made a pretty nice UI using, and this is this morning actually, because it didn't look like this before. We only just put this dynamic plugin in, but it's a nice UI based on some tests that we did that worked. And I definitely recommend doing this sort of Mechanical Turk thing, as long as you know that you will have to change it in the future. That's the key takeaway there for me. So this is what I was saying about the plugins. Gosh, our plugin list has been growing for a lot of time. The last 3 years it's been growing. I think it started to go down now, just about. So we've started merging the functionality that we've got. We had to basically, when you boil it down, there's so much overlap between what certain product owners or business leaders or learning technologists or whoever require. So a real takeaway is just making as much overlap as you can when you're designing a new plugin, a new piece of functionality. Sounds simple. It's probably not that simple, but really in the design of it, and don't go into too much. I guess go into a lot of granularity when you're designing the feature, and get as many people involved as you can that will be using it. Engage with the community would be definitely one to do. So one of the things that we got to a bit of a fork in the road, and that is an amazing pun. But we got a bit to a fork in the road where we were developing course format after course format after course format to do lots of little features, and that was no good. It became quite a burden to our small developer team. So we took the decision to, instead of keep doing that and building these course formats and throwing them away, build one that worked for every new feature that we would ever need in the future. I've done a talk on this, so there's a link here. I say talk. I did an article on this. I'd recommend just going and reading that. But the principle was that, say we've got a grid layout of activities, that we could take that as one of the sections, the layouts for one of the sections, and then another section could have a list, and then another section could have whatever we think about in the future. The other bit was to be able to attach metadata, any sort of metadata, whatever you can think of, images, guided learning hours, custom activity types, so we can change the UI based on what we say a forum is, not what Moodle says a forum is. And it allows us to say yes quite a lot now to people's questions. One of the things that we did in 2015, late 2015, was to actually try and do a mobile first design. Again, I talked about this earlier this year at the Mini Moot, and there's a YouTube video out there, I think. But one of the key things about this project was we hadn't really done before was user stories, acceptance criteria, having some really key really key design principles that we wanted to stick to, which in our case I think was mobile first, was material design. It was subtle animations, and a few others. It's in this link, and I'll share these slides afterwards so you can go and have a look. Yeah, so 2015 really was all about prototyping, experimenting, but also starting to get to a point where at the end of the year, we probably had something like 150 plugins. And that was getting a bit much. So we started to audit and standardize various plugins and get the different platforms onto the same code base. Obviously the same Moodle, but the same Avado code base. That's Moodle. Okay, so yeah, this happens a lot. I get it. People wait for the upgrades because it's quite a big chunk of time for us. We probably put a good three or 4 weeks with someone's time to do a major upgrade. Probably because we've customized the UI quite a lot. Maybe that's a takeaway. Try to stick closely to core for that reason. But we put a lot of time into it. So we actually waited 4 Moodle versions. We went from 2.7 to 3.1. It was painstaking. It was quite difficult. With over 150 plugins, but about 50 custom plugins per platform, it took a long time. The key takeaways for me and for the dev team was actually the opposite of that. So let's keep our plugins, the 50 or the 150, on the cutting edge. Have automated test coverage for all of them, and have them running on the latest code that Moodle is shipping weekly or daily or what have you, so that we can catch any bugs, help core more, because we're quite we're not so involved at the moment, and to be able to ship quicker than in 3 weeks. One of the things we did this year, so 2016 for us is going into the sort of corporate world a little bit more. So we've taken Moodle. We've been able to, it's not exactly a new concept, I suppose, but it is certainly a pain point for us selling courses to corporates. And I know you've got you can choose themes based on users, but we've been able to do quite a performant way of assigning a custom brand to a cohort. It's really simple. Like all it is really is logos, primary, secondary, and tertiary color, and then those are linked into the theme in very careful places so that it's not overburdening when whoever, I don't know who the client would be. If I look outside right now, there's a megabus, so bright yellow and bright blue, and their logo at the top. Maybe that's a bit too much. We choose subtle colors and we make it suitable for the learner. We're not changing here. We're retaining the same theme, the layouts, the UI components, and we're doing this because we've iterated them over the years, and we've got quite a lot of data that suggests it works for our learning experience. So yeah, so this year, it's not quite over yet, but really this year has been a long time upgrading to the Moodle versions, getting set up so we can do that more. I didn't talk about this freemium model. We've put a freemium model in place on .native using standard Moodle tools. So if you think about the sort of activity restrictions, we've used those to say, actually, here's a course, but only certain people get access to the first few bits. It's quite interesting. That's this site. Just put this in here. I didn't link it. So white labeling, so that's the branding I'm talking about. And one thing that's very early days right now, but is introducing H5P to our .native platform, our bite-sized learning platform. I'm really early on right now, so I don't really have any key takeaways for H5P. It's very interesting. It seems to add quite a lot of. We've used the interactivity of the videos so far. So that's been pretty great to liven up and streamline the sort of learning unit process that we have. Learning unit, by that I mean, so a piece of content followed by a sort of a check, and then maybe followed by a learning activation. That's been quite a good one. I should probably talk about that in the future. I know there's a couple of talks going on about that in the Mini Moot, so might be one to catch. So yeah, really, such a brief overview I've given you. Really, really brief. There's more as well. That's not limited. That's not the only things we've done in the last 3 years, but they're the key sort of things. Where we're going in the future, always up for debate. People can always change their mind. But from my point of view, there's something that I don't think Moodle does very well, but needs to be set up to do, which is giving a sort of adaptive, personalized, data-driven learning experience. And so we're going to be looking into this. I think the recent addition of tags is tagging everywhere is going to help. And we've got the ability to add this metadata to everything as well. So we can start building a sort of a rich taxonomy there. But we want to be able to use that data, analyze that data to drive our learning products. I mentioned earlier that we get a lot of user feedback on our Squared Online course, and it's iterated the course design. That's totally true. Some of that, not the majority of that, but some of that is from Moodle, and I'd want more of it to be coming from Moodle automatically, and to be able to iterate the design quicker. There's a lot of manual stuff we do with Moodle. I don't know if this is, I do know a lot of people are doing a lot of manual stuff in Moodle, course builds or moderating or facilitation or live classes maybe. We're going to be putting quite a lot of focus in trying to automate a lot of that stuff and make it simpler to do. We've got needs to self-provide reporting for our clients. This is something Totoro does quite well. There are plugins out there I know of, but right now we need some sort of solution. We're going to be looking into a few things there. And yeah, scaling the platforms. Just for a bit of info, our home learning college website, which just type it in, but home learning college has got 20,000 learners on it. Our .native website's got 20,000 learners on it. Squared Online's looking at about 5,000 rolling. It stays at about the same. The United for Wildlife MOOC has got 6,000 learners. I'm really pulling these off the top of my head now, so I'll stop. But yeah, those numbers are going to dramatically increase over the next year. So I'll be looking to do a bit of that. Now, I'd be interested in questions now. Cheers, guys. Questions. All right, Gareth. So, if there is one change to core to make upgrading easier that you would make, what would it be and why? So, one change to core. There's definitely something around. I've talked about this in the past, but I love renderers. They're brilliant. And actually, the changes already are made. We just haven't made the move to it. So the sort of templating that you get in themes now. But in terms of renderers, it's not so easy to track what renderer changes we've made. And obviously, when you do an upgrade, you're still overriding the renderers, and the system isn't telling you, oh, you're overriding these renderers. So I think that sort of change would be good. When you do an upgrade right now, it tells you what plugins are out of date, but it doesn't tell you what renderers you're still overriding and you should probably update. So maybe I'd pick that one. Yeah, possibly. Just an automatic one, do you think? So WordPress admin backend, yeah. Not sure how confident I'd be of it working. But yeah, wouldn't it be great if we got to that point? Yeah, does anyone else? Any questions? The IOC Athlete MOOC is free. Go sign up. You can have a look and wander around there. You can even go fiddle with HTML, see what you can find. The United for Wildlife MOOC is obviously free. Go have a sign up there. We've just updated it to the latest version of Moodle and our tech. And .native is also free, so you can get a certain amount. You can have a look around there. And there's lots more that I haven't talked about today.
Okay, Gareth and the IMoot, just while we're waiting for questions, thank you very much, Thomas. A really informative presentation. I'm certainly aware of your work and what your company's done, and a lot of your sites are really to aspire to, and people come to me and says, "Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, can you do that?" And it's really, you're really on, I think, on the cutting edge with what you can do with Moodle and making it look really, really modern. So once again, thank you for your presentation and thank you for your time.
No worries. Thanks very much. Any questions? I think there's a forum in the course with this live session. So if there isn't, anyway, we should add one. Thanks.